our next remarks come from Maria Ray, the National Marine Fisheries Service. She's the supervisor of the Central Valley office with NOAA's efforts here in the Bay, and frankly, kind of at the center of everything we seem to do these days. So, welcome, Maria.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Welcome to the panelists. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on this important panel. I really look forward to your deliberations, your report. Look forward to hearing the presenters today as well. Thank you to all the presenters on the agenda today, and to everybody here who has contributed to making this workshop come together. I take for granted in managing threatened and endangered species like winter run Chinook and spring run Chinook salmon that there are a multitude of factors that have led those species into that condition, not the least of which is a decline in their habitat, preclusion from their spawning habitat. Many of them can't access historic habitat due to the dams and diversions in the Central Valley. So there are habitat effects, temperature effects, there's loss of floodplain habitat with all the levees and all those systems, loss of riparian habitat and rearing habitat in the Delta, and there are other stressors. Here we are focusing on one of what's called often the other stressors today of predation, non-native predation in the Delta. Obviously, predation is part of the natural ecosystem, so what we really want you to focus on what's the nature of the stressor of non-native predation, or predation outside of its ecological context. Whenever you focus on one stressor, I think it's difficult because I'm sure you all as scientists are trained to think of whole systems. But I think by focusing on this one stressor, it would be really helpful to us in terms of synthesizing the available data out there and characterizing that and objectively looking at what we know, what we don't know, and helping us come up with a framework for additional research and management. And I do want to say that it's challenging. Of course, one of your questions is about, is there a population level effect? And I always think of those as a scientist, well, in a highly variable system like the Delta, how would you see a population level effect of almost any stressor? It's pretty difficult if you mean that in a statistical sense. So I would say ask yourself that both ways with both burdens of proof. How would you know that there isn't a population level effect? How confident are you that there isn't a population level effect? And I think just how do you think about even localized kinds of effects or effects to species where you have small populations of listed species. All of those kinds of things are of interest to us. I know this will be challenging for you to deliberate on, and I think it will be extremely helpful. So again, thank you for your willingness to do that. And I want to end by just thanking the co-sponsors, especially Department of Fish and Wildlife. Did you say Fish and Game? Because I thought you said Fish and Game, Greg. Greg Erickson, Carl Wilcox, Carol Atkins has done a tremendous amount of work. Also the Delta Science Program staff, who are wonderful to work with, and my own staff, Brian Begun and Brian Arwat, have contributed to this issue. And there will be folks from NIMS here throughout the day if you have any specific questions. Thanks very much.